Miv made sure that her door and windows were probably locked for the second time that night, then checked that she had everything she needed for what felt like the 12th time. She looked at the confirmation messages from some of her co-workers that her shifts would be covered for the next 3 days, quadruple-checking those as well. They had taken quite the convincing, and she had to make promises that she would do a double during first contact day, and cover other shifts as well. Looking over the notes in her father's personal holy text, as well as those of her own studies to become a wayfarer, she attempted to do something quite dangerous. The ritual she was about to perform was something that was only recommended for those that had much more experience than she did, and would cause her to see answers to important questions. More importantly, however, was that it was never meant to be performed alone. It was dangerous, even with an experienced wayfarer. The 7 candles she needed to light and the Kwani bulb mixture to be ingested would release the physical limitations of each of her eyes and body, allowing her to see past the realms of matter and commune with the spiritual in order to gain answers to a question or to solve something in a manner unreachable by usual means. Medically speaking, the Kwani bulb paste was a potent hallucinogen that caused uncontrollable seizures, muscular tears and strains, and lastly fatal heart attacks and mid-pops. However, the candles mitigated the fatalistic effects, but were also highly toxic themselves. Thus, the other candles were needed to counter the effects of the previous ones until full neutralization occurred. It was truly a delicate process, more art than science. There were still accidents that happened. She had laboriously made each of the candles by hand ahead of time, constructed in such a way as to allow a slowed, delayed, and timed release over the course of hours using different waxes and other components to achieve such an effect. She had made many such candles under her father's watchful eyes and that of other, much more experienced disciples of Lequin. The ones she was using were made in secret, without any guidance of any kind. Speaking quiet prayers and beginning the sequence, she ate and gagged down the pungent Kwani bulb paste, forcing herself to finish it all with a face of utter disgust at the vile, bitter mixture. Drinking at least a litre of water in an attempt to free her tongue of it, she finished lighting these 7 candles and waited calmly for the visions to start. Breathing in the different scents and aromas of the candles around her, she felt truly at peace as her worries faded away. In her species' version of the lotus position, she repeated a simple mantra to keep her sharp mind on task. As her heart began to race and thump in her ears, she felt her fingers twitch of their own volition while her vision swam. Miv's last coherent thought was, "I fucked up something." Gerd was miserable. In fact, she would have preferred to be hungover from a night of mixing various designer pills and binge drinking to this. Her headphones were cramped and pressed together, and her leaves were flattened and crumpled. The hazardous materials environment suit she was wearing was a typical generic one, and so it pressed and rubbed against her form in uncomfortable ways. While she would typically wear as little clothing as possible, the emergency maintenance work on tank number 4 necessitated that she had to wear something to stop the heavy material from rubbing up against her skin and chafing. As it was, her cranial flora was already sporting minor friction burns. Trying to adjust her suit for the millionth time and failing, she went back to the inglorious part of her job. She was shoveling activated sludge waste into a vacuum pump, as the Nimian was hosing down the congealed material from the walls using a high-pressure mixture of boiling water at 375 thermals and a 5% chlorine solution. Sweating profusely inside the suit, which was soaking into her hastily purchased and ill-fitting underclothes, despite its internal cooling apparatus. She took a sip of water from the internal storage tank, which was now warm as well, and let out a sigh of annoyance as she did so. While the boiling water was usually enough to kill most bacteria, the ones used for the sewage treatment process were a special kind of genetically engineered protozoa, able to handle and break down the various microorganisms from the many species that called Talvi home, and could not be released into the environment. The high concentration of chlorine made sure that if anything survived the boiling water, it would be destroyed by the chemical solution. Looking at the Nimian again, she could not fathom why he seemed so at ease. Perhaps it was because his hazardous environment suit was a much better fit, as well as having better fitting underclothes as well. Silently cursing the blown pump, the boiling water and the harsh heat of the summer sun, she continued to shovel literal shit into the portable pump. Since the main pump was offline, and hadn't been for at least a few hours, the sewage treatment protozoa had rapidly grown and colonized everything, accelerated by the weather, further exasperating the problem. "How are you holding up there, boss?" the Nimian asked her over their link communications. "Craptacular, Klein," Gerd replied. "I'm going to strangle whoever's been doing maintenance on this tank. I'm a tech, I shouldn't even be here in this muck. Nice pun there, Klein said, adjusting his four-handed grip on the hose and continuing to power wash the high walls of the tank. At least we're getting emergency hazard pay out of this, just in time for first contact day too. I still find it odd that there were only 2 Enviro suits on hand. That's what was cut from the budget, Gert said, grunting with a bit of effort as she pushed a bigger than usual load into the vacuum. Upper management didn't want to pay for the constant checks and unused equipment, and so got rid of 3 of them, and downgraded to these one-size-fits-most models. I was against the decision, which is probably why I'm here with you. I heard about that from Fez. She says some consultants were hired to streamline operations. Just a bunch of cost-cutting measures so the owners can make more credits. Precisely that, Gert said, stopping to take a bit of a breather. I'd be sharing air supply with you if they had their way. Had to point out there would be a biohazard to you right now. Good thing or not, I can smell my own stress pheromones. Gross, Klein said. I can smell my own stink as well. These suits can hardly keep up with the heat. Anyways, what would those pheromones do to me? Your species are walking bioweapons. Gert laughed a bit. That's true, to a point. Our pheromones can do some crazy things, if there's a high enough density of them. They break down pretty quickly, and is more of a signal to others that something's going on. Anyways, you'll be set on edge, your fight or flight response will get triggered, your nervous system will perceive a hidden threat and trigger its own stress response. After a while, you'll probably get a heart attack as your body dumps resources into its stress response. That's unpleasant. It most certainly is. Mr. Anaxmar seems personally affronted about not being able to save money on air tanks when I told him. That's about right for our plant manager. He views all credit spent by the company as his own, Klein said, as he stretched out his arms in sequence, so as to have free hands on the high-pressure hose at any given time. Which is why you're here with me. Exactly, Gert said, looking around to see how much sludge was left to clean out. I was given a poor excuse of a reason why I'm down here with you too. Can't prove anything in a legal sense, and I'm the only one able to fit into this suit. Though fit is loosely defined. I'm chafing all over and the pressure on my cranial flora is starting to give me a migraine. Let's just get this done so we can decontaminate and shower. You got it, boss. I'll buy first round after shift, Klein said, as he braced his body and cranked up the pressure to maximum. This is nice, Selena said from her spot next to Rutak. Yes it is, Rutak replied softly, enjoying the quiet moment. Earlier that evening, Rutak had helped Selena buy a brand new hoverbike, one that had extra storage space for her various computers and spare prosthetics, as well as ones to be delivered. When questioned about the money, Selena had explained that she got a corporate loan and put the wrecked up as collateral. It had been surprisingly easy and quick, oddly enough, and the last sum of credits deposited into her account in roughly an hour, instead of the usual days it would take for the other kinds of personal loans. When asked how she would pay back the loan, Selena said she had a large job with Talvi Security coming up. After they bought the hoverbike, they spent time at a mall buying new computer equipment and software. Now, they were in the upper hills surrounding Talvi, watching the sunset together on an impromptu picnic of a sort. Sitting on the newly purchased outdoor blanket, Selena leaned against Rutak while watching the sunset on the small outcropping. They had travelled a little ways off the beaten trail and had left their hoverbikes parked on the edge of the road. Sipping on a different brand of the silvery drink she had with lunch, she was enjoying the evening, as it had finally started to actually cool down. With the cooler temperatures, the noises of the wildlife came to make itself known with bird calls and insect chirps. Oftentimes she could hear and sometimes see a ground creature that reminded her of lizards cosplaying as squirrels. They were kind of cute. Taking a bite out of some kind of jerky, Rutak said, "This is far better than the restaurant I wanted to go to with you." "It most certainly is," Selena replied. "But I think the food would have been better there. We didn't plan this out at all, and it shows." "True, but that just adds to the charm of it all," he said with a smile. "It shows that we actually had an adventure, one without being shot at." "I can see how people like that kind of life. It's not for me. I just want to be a simple prosthetist and help people. Though I have to admit, I did look pretty badass on the news like that. You did too, by the way." "Huh, I did, huh? Barely worth the legal forms. I did get praise from my clan for that, and I was told by the elder my walkabout is over. A true conquest by combat, just like in ancient times." "Brought honor to your people and all that?" "Not honor as you would think it, more like potential. I demonstrated what those of my clan could be capable of, and so raised my clan's social standing." "That's interesting, and not something I'd have imagined. Terrans have all sorts of honor-based traditions, both new and ancient. Yours is a refreshing one to learn about." "Thanks." The two lapsed into a pleasant silence, as the blue sun started to touch the horizon. Selina found her hand interlaced with his scaled one as she looked into his eyes. His face highlighted by the lengthening shadows cast by the setting sun, giving him a dramatic, pensive visage as he stared at the distance, lost in thought. Hesitating for but a moment, she leaned up a bit and kissed his cheek.